When you play Elden Ring, you'll be forced, potentially at gunpoint, to pick one of 4 playstyles. You could become a bodybuilder, level strength, and become obsessed with physically dominating your enemies. Or you could become addicted to methamphetamines, level dexterity, and exsanguinate your enemies like a chupacabra. If that doesn't appeal to you, then you can become a philosopher, level intelligence, and avoid interacting with the game as much as possible. But this will likely lead to you being bullied for your lifestyle choices. So maybe you'll just surrender yourself to the void and develop levels of faith only seen in the baptismal church down the street and mud huts in the middle of Pakistan. But don't look up now, it's 2014 and that's a drone. Well, today, as you probably surmised from the title, I'll be doing the latter and letting Jesus take the wheel as I try and beat Elden Ring with only incantations. I decided to start as the prophet so that I could start with the seal and at least one offensive incantation. But what champion will I be taking in the battle? Well, no other than the prophet Osama bin Laden. Why? I don't know why, I just thought it was funny. One might ask though if my portrayal of Osama bin Laden is slightly offensive, or maybe even racist. Well, I don't know, but I'll be sure to send a letter to Osama himself just to ask him personally. But it's been a while and he's yet to get back to me, but I'm sure that any day now I'll get a response. Until then, we'll continue under the pretense that everything is kosher. I began the game at the Chapel of Anticipation, but no, you ignoramuses, I wasn't there to blow it up. Before leaving, I perused the items that were left in my inventory. I quickly discarded the short spear I started with, and then decided to do the same with the shield, after I disrespected my entire bloodline by casting an incantation instead of blocking. That was so awkward that I restarted my entire playthrough in shame. Anyways, to leave the chapel, I performed a classic gamer maneuver and fondled this dead woman before taking my finger out of her and leaving. Fighting the Grafted Scion, I ran up to it and then casted my incantation. But, well, I thought it was a fireball, but yeah, I fucked up. For that fuck up, I ended up face down in a ditch. But unfortunately for me, someone showed up and put me in the recovery position before I was able to send myself to the recycle bin. Now I actually have to play the game, so I headed outside and that's where I met Vare, who I don't think is a very social person, because his first instinct was to insult me by pointing out that I had 0 maidens, which was just a bit uncalled for. But Vare did tell me though that I should head to Castle Stormveil to fight Godric the Grafted. And I didn't know if this was just a veiled way of him telling me to kill myself, but I don't have any other leads, so I started to head in that direction. Then, while resting at a site of grace near the local tent city, I was approached by someone, and it wasn't a homeless man asking for money, but Melina, who wants to be my maiden. And that just goes to show Vare that I'm built different. And while he could tell I had 0 maidens, so can all the women, and they yearn to be with me. Back to Melina, she also gives me a horse, with no down payment and only a verbal contract. What an idiot. In exchange, Melina wants me to take her to Leyndell, so I added that to like 4 or 5 on my objective list before setting out. First though, I need to kill Godric, but killing a demigod sounds a bit difficult, so first I'm gonna do a little prep work. I first headed to the east where I found a church and the Flask of Wondrous Physic, which ended up being very important this run. To the south, I came across a fort that was under siege by subhuman degenerates, but I didn't want to interfere, so I just picked up a golden seed from the courtyard and half of a seemingly important medallion. Moving on, I found this dumb little hat made out of a dumb scarab, which apparently is supposed to empower my incantations, so I put it on, but foreshadowing, it didn't last long. As while I am a masochist, the 15% reduced FP cost was not worth the increase in damage taken. Now, there's one more thing for me to do before challenging Godric, and that's heading south, crossing the bridge into the Weeping Peninsula, which is basically just Limgrave Plus. I first headed west into demi-human territory, and I just ignored them, because they're godless sodomites that have nothing of interest to me. But I did end up finding the Faith Knot here, which was very helpful. Heading up the hill, I found a church, picking up another sacred tear. I then dropped by this other church which is basically within cumshot distance, which I always thought was odd. After that, I began heading north in search of more items, and that's where I saw it. I have a feeling that that teardrop scarab is going to have something nice for me. One problem though, and that's that sky rats are swarming the area, so I'm going to need to come up with a plan if I want to successfully pull off this heist. Or I could just jump down there and pray I don't get raped while I spam catch flame before panic rolling away. Hey, if it works, then it works. And now we have Lightning Strike. I then visited my last church collecting the Frenzied Flame incantation which I used to kill this teardrop scarab, which drops Poison Mist, which is a special tool which will help us later. This run has been going pretty well so far, and I was feeling rather bold, so I decided to take on Castle Morn. You know, as a little test run for Stormvale, and it didn't go well. I got my shit pushed in, with my ass being done in 3 times, which were the first tests of the run by the way. Well, despite the test run going poorly, maybe Stormvale will go better, so I returned the Limgrave and there I was confronted by this blue woman, Ronnie. She seemed pretty cool and she even gave me some free stuff. Yeah, it was entirely useless to me, but Miss Blue Woman would make a perfect backup if anything was to happen to Melina. But it's not like anything bad could ever happen to Melina. Enough delays though, I entered Stormhill via the gate front and said hi to Rodrika before arriving at Stormvale Castle. I walk up and guess who's waiting to ambush us? It's your father, who abandoned you long ago and wants to reunite and make up for lost time. No, I'm just kidding, it's Marget. The fight against Marget starts well as I try out the damage of Lightning Strike, and it's pretty good. Then though, I got a little too greedy and tried to use my poison ass gas on him. Marget didn't seem to like that and he sent my ass to the recycle bin. After a few more tries though, I was able to identify that Catch Flame was my best incantation. And while I can neither confirm or deny whether it burns hot enough to melt steel beams, I can confirm that I will be abusing this incantation for the foreseeable future. After Marget was burnt, Melina was actually impressed with my ability to complete simple tasks and not die of dysentery, so she invited me to the Cool Kids Club. Once there, I spotted fellow religious fanatic Corin. And while he did not understand my questions about the Quran, he did sell incantations, and I bought all the ones I thought would be useful. And yes, I was stupid enough to accidentally buy a second copy of Catch Flame. I can't explain that. Anyways, while at the round table hold, I also grabbed the Assassin's Prayer Book. And while assassinations really aren't my style as they lack the pizzazz I like, I ended up giving the book to Cornman, and bought both Assassin's Approach and Darkness. Insert Rick James joke here, I guess. Back on the outside, I realized that breaking into a castle would probably be a bit difficult. As I was pondering my options though, this guy called out to me claiming to have a way inside. He's Gostock, and he looks like a relatively trustworthy guy. I mean, somebody should probably search his hard drive, but I'm not the police, so we'll work with him anyways. He wants us to just circle around the outside and enter through a convenient entrance into the wall. Maybe I gave this castle's security too much credit. It's that, or this is a trap. But there's no way that Gostock would ever betray me. Well, he didn't even need to, because these guys over here wiped me from existence multiple times, leaving some rather embarrassing bloodstains. Then, when I came to this ominous room that looked like a trap, I was resigned to my fate. I had no choice but to enter, and it went about as poorly as expected. Good thing for me though, my life is expendable, so much so that Mr. Krabs would gladly sell my soul for 62 cents. Eventually, I got to the top of the battlements and did some hardcore parkour to avoid as much fighting as possible. The one nice moment of my time in Stormvale Castle was when I found the Godskin Prayer Book, because it gave me something to look forward to outside of this hell. Now though, we're at Godric, who doesn't really look like a demigod but more like Madonna or a French peasant in the late stages of syphilis. My name calling though did little but make the sting of each defeat even worse. Have you ever tried to jump over something to avoid it, but then you hit your head so hard that it destroys your entire cervical spine? Well, that's what happened here, and it carried over to my following runs, with the most embarrassing being when I tried to set up a fight with poison and then Godric put me out the street cleanup before I did a solitary point of damage. Yeah, this is rock bottom. But you know what that means, that things can only improve from here, and they did with my eventual defeat of Godric. Now I can go back to Vare and confront him about the mean things he said about me. Before continuing into Liurnia, there's some things that I want from Calid. And yeah, I've heard that Calid is bad, but I lived in a dirt hut in an inhospitable wasteland where the only pastimes are dying from dehydration and avoiding drone strikes. How bad could Calid really be? Well, the first thing I saw going into Calid was a burning church. Typically not a good sign, but churches normally have good stuff in them, so I approached. But inside, there was no Happy Meal. In fact, I was the Happy Meal all along. Now to the reasons I'm actually here. First on the list is the Teardrop Scarab, which gives us Whirl of Flame, which is bad, don't use it. Following that is the Fire Shrouded Cracked Tear, dropped by this putrid avatar. It is good, so use it. Next on the list is found in between these two wheelchair-based creatures. Uh-oh, I think they may have heard me, because they are currently violently molesting me. Doesn't matter though, I got what I was after. Flame grant me strength. Great buff, doesn't last long, but if you have the opportunity to flate yourself mid-fight, then apply this for big damage. Finally is the raid on Fort Faroth, but before that I want to point out this whack-ass setup I got going on here. I mean, only 3 of those deal damage and 2 of those are ass. Anyways, I grabbed the second half of the Dectus Medallion. Okay, it's about time that I leave Calid, but I took another beating from Anastasia, you know, for the road. Now in Liurnia is where the wheat is separated from the chaff, and I am separated from my happiness. I dicked around Liurnia for a bit, picking up the Fire Monk's prayer book and the Dragon Cult prayer book, and then gave them both to the Big Turtle, along with the Godskin prayer book from Stormvale. From him, I ended up buying Black Flame, Surge Flame, and Blessing's Boon. 2 of those are ass, and I'll leave it to you to figure out which. I also ended up switching over to the Godslayer's Seal at some point, because it had better scaling than the Finger Seal I was using. Anyways, this is where I've reached a crossroads, and I must contemplate whether to fight Renala or Radahn. The answer seems obvious. Renala is the easier fight. I mean, you're literally beating up a comatose woman. But say, hypothetically, if I respected women, then it would be pretty damaging to my soul to hurt an innocent woman in such a way. It might just break my spirit. But of course, we're talking hypothetically. Okay, I'll just say it. I don't want to fight Renala because the mere act of entering Raya Lucaria is antithetical to my well-being. The air is poison, in the same way stepping foot in San Francisco would be to a heterosexual man. So I'm gonna go fight Radahn. To fight Radahn, I first have to enable the Radahn Festival, and to do that, I can either work through Ronnie's quest, or I can just head to the Altus Plateau. But I have a certain moral stance about not entering Altus until I defeat 2 demigods, so I'm gonna fraternize with the Smurf Queen. Entering Caria Manor, I avoided being fingered and eventually encountered the spirit of Royal Knight Loretta, who, despite not even being real, folded me a couple times. She also hit me with this absolutely filthy chain attack. This is truly peak Elden Ring. I then spoke with Ronnie, and she either recognizes me as a high-value male, or she simply is in short supply of useful lackeys, because she wants to onboard me immediately. So I guess I'm Team Smurf now. She has me talk with my fellow blue enthusiast, and things aren't looking very promising. But I'm off to meet with Wolf Boy in the underground. Down there, I realize the reality of the situation. Blide is both retarded and useless, making me leg it all the way back to Caria Manor just to ask Selvis to pretty please help us. Selvis just gives me a reference and sends me on my way to talk to a woman named Selen in Limgrave, who I find in the basement of the Waypoint Ruins. She finally gets the ball rolling when she tells me that I need to kill Radahn to do something. I wasn't really paying much attention as I was admiring her feat, but all that matters is Selen is the festival coordinator, so now that I spoke to her, the festival is on. Arriving at Redmane Castle, somehow Blide got there before me. Fuck if I know how, but all that matters now is that I can fight Radahn. I obviously won't be summoning help, so I'm gonna be going mano a mano with Radahn. And I'm feeling a little bit inadequate. My first run was going well until Radahn unleashed his balls on me and beat me over the head. After a few more runs, I got one that was promising, until Radahn pulled out his ultimate finishing move, the spinny corkscrew, and he nearly deleted my System 32 folder in one fell swoop. But, much like a battered wife, I don't go down so easily, and I finished off Radahn with a spiteful black flame ball to the crotch. As Radahn was defeated, he partook in one last spiteful maneuver and fired an ICBM at Limgrave, but I don't really care. With 2 great runes now in my possession, I headed to the Altus Plateau via the elevator. Now in Altus, there's some pretty cool talismans that I want to pick up before moving on. The first of such was the Godfrey icon from the Golden Lineage Everjail, where I thought, wait a minute, is that Godric? Oh no, that's just Godfrey. Then I just grabbed the fire and lightning scorpion charms before heading to my next boss, the Draconic Tree Sentinel. Now it's time to harvest the seeds that I planted earlier. I'm gonna kill the Draconic Tree Sentinel without him even seeing me. First, I have to get behind him, which took a couple of tries, but once I was back there, it was as simple as casting Poison Mist, and then waiting. And waiting. And waiting. 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 Oh, it's done. Yeah, that took quite a while. But, was it worth it? No. Did it make me feel good? No. Do I hate my life? Yes. But did this round asshole teleporting behind me make me smile in a way that resurrected my soul? Yes. Anyways, now inside Leyndell, I've actually completed my non-legally enforceable contract with Melina. So she gives me her thanks and tells me that I will become the Elden Lord before leaving. Anyways, before moving on, there's some things that I need to do. So I first picked up the Gravelstone Seal before returning to Liurnia to collect the Lightning Shrouded Cracked Tear. Next, I picked up a few Dragon Colt incantations to complement the Gravelstone Seal, such as Lightning Spear and Frozen Lightning Spear. Now though, I actually need to upgrade the Gravelstone Seal so that I could swap over, and while collecting smithing stones I fought this Crystallian, but I ran out of blue flask so I decided to use my Memory of Grace to leave, but I didn't know that it would eat my 25,000 runes. I thought it would just leave it on the ground like when you die, but now it's gone and I feel rather foolish. Anyways, with my seal now upgraded, I fought Godfrey, who is pretty much always a joke and just exists to hand over my last talisman slot. Now for Morgot, the real boss of Leyndell. Then, a few tries later, things were looking up, and I thought I had things locked, so I started edging. But Morgot punished me by penetrating my ass before running me over, leading to quite the embarrassing choke. Finally though, I was able to beat him, and I hit him with a tea bag for the trouble. I then tried to enter the Erd Tree, but predictably, things can't possibly be that easy. I mean, we haven't even committed an act of terrorism yet, but fortunately, my partner in crime is back, and she's here to help. Our next plan is to head to Flame Peak to commit domestic terrorism by burning down the Erd Tree, which sounds good to me. Before that though, there's something I need to do. Earlier I said that I didn't want to enter Rayo Lucaria because I'd probably develop some variant of terminal cancer if I did. But unfortunately I realized that I really wanted the Radagon icon, so I just had to chance it. Well, I'll see if I end up with terminal cancer later, but for now I'm heading into the Forbidden Lands to reach Flame Peak. Approaching Flame Peak, there's one thing standing in my way, and that's the Fire Giant. And he is the reason why I was pushing for lightning incantations, as if the name hasn't given away yet, he is one with the fire. Despite my planning, Fire Giant gives me quite a few problems, and that seems to be a bit of a pattern with my challenges. Fire Giant is always a pain in the ass, but this time he was a bit more than a pain, and he nearly broke my sanity. On my first run, things were going well into the second phase, but then I got a bit too greedy and the Fire Giant punished me by killing me, then sitting both of his balls right on my face. Okay, but it was working, so I'll just run it back. But then what happened next could only be described as an unfortunate series of fuck-ups that I will take only some of the blame for. Torrent was one of the problems, as he went on to betray me multiple times both directly and indirectly. Directly by refusing my orders to fucking move away from the fireballs, and indirectly by going on an unauthorized labor strike as a result of me having no flasks of Crimson Tears. But Torrent wasn't even the biggest problem. That was the dog shit ass Lightning Spear. I don't know why, but when fighting Fire Giant, the range of Lightning Spear just seems pitiful. And with its slow travel speed, by the time that my bolt gets there, he's already moved his hand out of the way and I get no damage. So because of that, I came up with a strategy of sticking close to him, not using charge attacks, and just pelting him with body shots. And it was working until he suddenly decided to do a roll that killed me instantly. But okay, that was seeming to work, so I just ran it back a few times. But now, for reasons unknown to me, I ran out of FP. I tried a few more times, and then it was after this attempt that I gave up. For the night. The next day, I went and wasted over an hour before fighting him to grab the Erd Tree Sealed, upgraded to +9, only to do less damage. At this point, the game is just mocking me. Finally, this is where I went insane. I was willing to do anything to free me from this hell. And that's when I pulled out my secret weapon. Yeah, a while ago, I grabbed this from Gowry as an insurance policy in case lightning maxing failed, and at least for Fire Giant, it had. With the Jizz missiles at my disposal, it was only a matter of time until Fire Giant fell, and he did. Now I can finally move on and see just what Melina is planning, but before I do, I stop cross-dressing. Sitting down, Melina told me that she was gonna act as kindling to burn the Erd Tree so that I could become the Elden Lord. But surely she's talking in metaphor, it wasn't actually gonna burn herself alive so she didn't have to be with me. But that's exactly what she did. And I probably should have seen this coming. I mean, there were small signs that a girl gives you when she's gonna break up with you, but I didn't think that she would immolate herself. I guess at least she was kind enough to knock me out beforehand. Now in Framzula, I'm a bit depressed, so we'll get through this quickly. I ignored most of the enemies, but I did grab the Ancient Dragon Cult prayer book before heading back to the big turtle to give him the prayer book and buy the Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear and the Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. I then returned to Framzula, jumping into the Godskin Duo's arena, but I was actually able to sneak away to the side of Grace, which I found kind of funny. But now it's time for the Godskin duo, where I tried out my new incantations. The Ancient Dragon Lightning Spear was not all that great, but the Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike made me bust in my pants. But it also disappointed me more than I disappoint my father. The unfortunate thing is that it's all up to chance, as you can either do over 3,500 damage or like 700. It didn't really end up mattering though, as Fat Boy got stuck and the Tall One's brain started buffering. I moved on, but before the fight with Malakath, I decided to go back to Ranni to try and gain the will to fight to the end of the game. So I descended into the earth and found the city of Nokron. But before I could get there, I had to fight the Stray Mimic Tier, which was actually very important, as it allowed me to find out that NPCs are not able to dodge an uncharged lightning spear, so you can kinda just tap them on the forehead over and over and they'll just take it. Anyways, I was able to retrieve the treasure of Nokron before returning to Ranni and handing it over, and yeah, it's been like a month since we last talked, but better late than never, I guess. Ranni then thanked me for my service before taking her leave, but she couldn't escape me, so I just hunted her down by her scent and found her doll form. Then I just sat at the side of Grace and looked deep into her doll eyes for an uncomfortable length of time. She was pretty mad about that, so she made me perform a task for her. The task was to kill Blide, or the Baleful Shadow, but as I said before, Uncharged Lightning Spear completely baffles NPCs, basically turning them into human-shaped bricks. Then I just had to traverse the Lake of Rot before finding Estelle, which might have been challenging at like level 50, but not really at this point. So I took him to the cleaners, but after the fight, I came to a dark realization. I don't have the Dark Moon Ring. This means I must return to Radio Lucaria, which makes it almost certain that I will soon collapse from terminal brain cancer. So we need to finish this quickly. I already beat the Red Wolf, so I have free access to Renala, and it didn't matter how many tombstones she threw at me, I was gonna end this. Renala tried to crawl away, but there's no escaping me. I don't know why, but this looks super ominous, like I'm about to stomp out Renala. But then Ranni pulls up. I don't know how she's here, but I think she might be a bit mad about my assault of her mother. But I got the ring, gave Renala a high five, and headed to the Cathedral of Manus Celis. When I got there, I found Ranni, and it seemed that she'd gotten over me attempting to curb stomp her mother, so now we're married, and as a symbol of our covenant, I changed my outfit from the prophet with a square thing around my neck to the prophet with a circle thing around my neck, which is a significant upgrade according to the voices in my head. Now I can finish the game. Malakath is pretty easy despite his high elemental resistance because, well, he forgot the level Vigor. With that, death was unleashed and I woke up in the Ashen Capital, which you know, felt like home. Gideon was up next, and while he planned for every contingency, he is innately flawed as an NPC, and his lackluster brain activity allowed me to pelt him with uncharged lightning spears. Now for Godfrey, the first old man, and I nearly sent his ass home on the first try, but again, I got greedy and overconfident. So, father like son, he disciplined me for my premature joking. After this, I failed a lot, and it was quite the downfall, but the reason for that was obvious to diagnose. My armor was too heavy and I was too fat. I was mid-rolling, and everyone knows that mid-rolling is for suckers. You either light roll or face tank everything, those are the only options. So I stripped down to stay as lean and mean as possible. With that, I was able to defeat Godfrey. Now I'm at the end of the road. There's one final challenge to face, the final boss. At first, I was hoping that maybe I'd be able to just talk it out with Marika, but when their first action was to grab a giant hammer, I knew things were about to go down. Radagon is quite the boss for ranged builds, as he has an ability that will eliminate attacks before they even hit him. Except for uncharged lightning spears, as Radagon seems to share the same mental deficiencies as the NPCs of this game. But lightning spear takes quite a while to cast successively, and additionally, Radagon resists lightning damage. So after some experiments, I found the best setup for Radagon, and that is, surprisingly, Catch Flame. It can be chain cast for high DPS, Radagon has no fire resistance, and for some reason it seems like he can't use Deflect on this one either. So just look at this. He goes from being there to being cooked to being dead. That was fast. Anyways, we all know this isn't the end, as Elden Beast is next, and I want you to take a look at this clip quickly, and it will explain why Elden Beast is one of the most irritating bosses. Yet he pulled out all the bullshit. After that death, I decided that I would be bringing something special for Big Boy over here, and that's Pest Threads. they're making a comeback because Elden Beast resists all elements I think at like 40%, except for Holy, which is made entirely useless at 80%. But Elden Beast's physical resistance aren't nearly as impressive, so when I bust my load on his chest, he freaked out and then went on to refuse to use any of his physical moves, and he was just doing strafing runs like an A10 Warthog. But eventually, with no flask left, I met him on the ground, and that was the end of him. With that, I'm done. I beat Elden Ring with only incantations, and now I can summon Ronnie to take me away. Okay, so that's it. I've beaten Elden Ring with only incantations. This is the longest script I've ever written, and will probably be my longest video so far. So if you've extracted any happiness from this video, then maybe you could like, share, and comment to help me out. And subscribe if you'd like to see more like this. Anyways, I want to thank anyone still watching at this point and wish you a great rest of your day. Peace.